Hi guys! So I wanted to make a video showing you how to work the first block that kind of fans off of the odd shape, and then in showing that I'll also show you the floating increase. So if you can see in this image here, here's my odd shape, and the next thing you need to do is work a block right here. And if you notice, you're going to get to the top of this pyramid and you're going to need to make some more stitches, and you're not going to have anything to work into. So that's what the floating increase does, is it allows you to continue to work stitches in the same stair-step kind of diagonal pattern, even though you don't have anything to work into. So this is the shape that we're going to be making. This first block would be this green block. And it's your choice if when you get to the end of this shape, if you want to fasten off and then attach yarn in the corner, or what I do is on my last stitch I just change colors. So I'm making my last double crochet and then I have one more yarn over to do. And I just take my new color and I yarn over and complete the stitch with my new color. So to make this shape, we need to make 5 stitches up the pyramid and then 3 floating increases. There's only 4 stitches up the pyramid, so we need to start with an increase because we want to build our first stitch off to the side here. And I did make a C2C video where I defined all of my terminology that I use in the blanket. So if something is a little confusing sounding to you when you read the pattern, maybe if you watch that video, it'll help us to be on the same page. So you need to chain 6. And like I said in the C2C video, I always work in the back bumps of my chains for anything, not just for C2C. And I always make this first stitch before I turn my work. So that's what I'm doing now. So I made my increase and I still need to turn my work and then work up the side of the pyramid. So I have 4 more stitches to make. So I'm doing those now just by slip stitching into the next space, chaining 3 and making 3 double crochets. So now I've made 5 stitches up the side of my odd shape, and I need to make the 3 floating increases so that I can have a total of 8 stitches for that row. So basically, when I was thinking of how to solve this problem, I just thought all you need is a chain 3 loop right here to keep working. So I basically create that chain 3 loop by chaining 6 and slip stitching. So I've finished my last stitch. I chain 6, and then I slip stitch into the very last double crochet that I made. I insert my hook from back to front. And now you have this little loop. So you're ready to make your stitch. So you chain 3 and then make 3 double crochets inside of this loop. So there's my first floating increase, and you can see that it is floating. There's not a stitch underneath it. The stitches are still oriented the same, you know, right side showing vertically like the rest of them, and it still has the stair step pattern on this top side and on the bottom side, which is really important. You want the stair step. So if your floating increases aren't doing that, you might be doing them wrong, because the way you layer in your other blocks, you're going to need to put stitches in those places. So I need to make 2 more floating increases. So I'll do that now by chaining 6, slip stitching into the last double crochet. Again, I do that from back to front. And now I'm ready to make my C2C stitch by chaining 3 and making 3 double crochets. And then the last stitch, floating increase stitch I should say, chain 6, slip stitch, chain 3, and make your 3 double crochets. So now I have the start of that block, and I have my 8 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So to make this block, I just want to bring to your attention, it's all just basic C2C stitches that you already know, but it's a very unusual shape because you have this straight edge right here along the bottom, and then you have this stair step pattern everywhere else. So to get this shape, it's really important that you pay attention in the pattern when you're starting rows, if you're starting with an increase or with a decrease. And then it's also important when you finish the row that you verify that your stitch count is correct, because I think a lot of people go on C2C like autopilot and they just start working rows and they end up making straight edges here or just doing things that are not quite how they're supposed to be. And then unfortunately, because of the way you layer blocks, you know, if you make a mistake earlier on, you potentially have a lot of ripping up stitches in your future in order to fix it. So the pattern is extremely repetitive, and at some point I think you'll sort of like unlock it in your head, and it won't really take a lot of conscious effort and will be fairly intuitive to you. But in the beginning, the first several blocks, I would just be very diligent about counting at the end of every row. So back to this piece, the first row was 8 stitches and we worked those up. The second row, we want to also make 8 stitches. Here's the first stitch of the second row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we did not start it up here like you normally do in C2C. We started it over here like, you know, like we're squaring off our blanket. But, you know, clearly we're not squaring it off because there's weird overhang up here too. So this first row is started with a decrease. And I talk about this in my C2C video, but it's really important that you make your decreases with a chain 3. And I say this in the pattern as well in the pattern notes. So please remember to do that. So you chain 3 so that you can fit and get into this chain 3 loop over here. Slip stitch into that loop, turn your work, and then chain 3 and make a stitch. And I'll make one more stitch. So I'm going to slip stitch into the next stitch, turn your work, and then chain 3 and make a stitch. 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 chain 3, and make 3 double crochets. So for this second row, if you look, I've made 1, 2, and then I would continue down 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then when I go to start row 3, I do want to continue stitches on, I do want to create this straight edge. So I would start the row with an increase, which is where you chain 6 and you make the 3 double crochets in the 4th, 5th, and 6th chain from the hook. And you can see on here, so here's row 2 where I came down. Row 3, I'm going to come up and I'm going to work 9 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So don't let that part fool you, because this is where you made a decrease and you started making a straight edge, like you typically do in CTC. But we like jagged, bumpy edges for the Felix blanket. So that's where I'm saying, if you check your stitches at the end of every row, you'll notice if you went on autopilot and you stopped early because you saw that straight edge and you just kind of instinctively kept going. So count your stitches. And then at the end of this third row, you would work 9 stitches back down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So as you can see, we do not want to stitch up here. So we're not going to increase. You're just going to decrease. So you can start your next stitch like beside and not on top of. So you can get 9. And then down here you do want to increase because you want to keep growing this edge. So you'll do the chain 6 increase and you'll have 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 coming up. Decrease so you can work beside the stitch for 10 down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So hopefully this helps you understand how to make the floating increases and then how to get this first block set up. And again, it's just, I know I've said it many times, but please pay attention to the pattern. If it's an increase row, you're going to start by, your first stitch will be where you chain 6 and make the 3 double crochets into the chains. If it's a decrease row, your first stitch will be where you chain 3 and slip stitch and then start working kind of beside your stitch. And then double check your stitch counts, because you should have a nice bumpy stair step all around this shape except for the bottom straight edge.